So recently I have finished the Clone Wars Season 7 and have jumped on the Avatar train like everyone else. And as someone who grew up watching their father's old cartoons, let me just say, cartoons for kids have changed a lot since the 1980s. However, while it was easy just to look at their animation and cheesy writing and call these shows inferior, 80s cartoons did give us some of the greatest characters. They either created or brought characters to the world of television that to this day are still fondly remembered, like DuckTales, She-Ra, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and one of these being the Transformers. This show, more than the comics, was the guideline for almost every other Transformer media. And part of the formula included the focus on the characters. You see, the main point of the Transformers wasn't to sell kids weapons or gadgets or big play sets. It was to sell kids robots that could transform. The show had to make these toys into awesome war heroes or war villains, and in doing so, they created some of the biggest pop culture icons to date. They still continue to make constant appearances in comics, shows, video games, and movies, with personalities deeply rooted into the original cartoon. So with the new Netflix show coming out soon, now's a good time to look back where it all began and rank the 10 best characters this show created. Jazz is one cool bot. While the other Autobots are so bent on the war and stopping the Decepticons, Jazz is just having a good time on Earth. As his name implies, he loves Earth's music, even if it annoys his team. That's not to say he doesn't care about his fellow Autobots. On the contrary, he's probably one of the most caring Transformers. And he can hold his own weight in battle. I like how even though music is his main gimmick, it's not his primary attack or strategy. He also doesn't think of himself better than his teammates, and is willing to follow his leader's command. Not to mention, he's voiced by Scatman Crothers himself. This guy's just a load of fun. It is a shame he was basically replaced in Season 2 by Blaster, who really just is a downgraded version of Jazz. But he wasn't killed in Transformers the movies, so that's something at least. I think this is a really good, enjoyable character. I normally don't like the big, tough, and dumb trope. It's repetitive, unimaginative, and it's everywhere. But Brawn is pretty entertaining. Sure, he does do a lot of the things the trope isn't famous for, like having a big ego or never coming to battle with a plan, but for an 80s side character, I think he has enough depth to help him stand out. His self-righteousness is more than a trait, and can actually cause real problems within the team. And while he does seem to esteem himself higher than the other Autobots, he still cares about them. Also, Brawn's rush-in head-first tactic doesn't always work out for him. I hate when the strong dimwit character just goes into battle with no plan or forethought, but still wins because comedy?
Sorry.
But Brawn normally pays for running in blindly at the enemy. He literally died because he charged at Starscream. It makes his ignorance even more ironic and humorous. Add that with some cheesy one-liners and you get yourself a pretty entertaining character.
Then I got a honey of an idea.
Wheeljack has an almost cartoon uncle vibe. He's super friendly and helpful, while also being great at what he does. And he never seems to take anything too seriously, unless it's really important or it's affecting someone else. I also like how, even though he's a scientist, he's not really a nerd or overly obsessed. They save those stereotypes for other characters. He really feels like that cool uncle that's always making some wacky invention in his garage. I think it's neat that not all of his creations fail or always succeed. It's a mixed bag, and he's always ready to improve on where he failed. That's the thing about Wheeljack. You always see him working, whether it's building a new weapon or a crazy contraption, or even fixing injured teammates. He's normally in the background trying to be useful, and because the writers could just put him in the back, he makes a ton of appearances for the first 2 seasons. And because he's such a memorable and reoccurring character, it only makes sense to kill him off screen. Like, wow, that was really cool of the writers.
You monster.
Wheeljack is great, though. He makes an impact on both the show and the audience, and bonus points for being the first character on screen. Everyone from your grandma to your dead goldfish knows this character. He's in almost every Transformer media, mostly because he's just a good average character. He's not too smart, not too dumb. He has decent fighting and driving skills. Not to mention that his lack of strong bond to the war makes him relatable and the perfect gateway to the Transformers mythos. His compassion and empathy won over audiences' hearts, enough to grant him his own spin-off movie. And watching the original cartoon made me realize why he stuck out so much. He doesn't have a big ego or gimmicky power or overly cares about the war. He's just so normal. But because everyone else is just a nutcase, he winds up standing out from the crowd. His friendship with Spike is adorable and makes sense seeing how he's the most human out of all the Autobots. He's a cute character that delights us whenever he's on screen. Grimlock is probably the most popular Transformer. He's a big robot that transforms into an even bigger dinosaur. What kid wouldn't like that? Like Bumblebee, he can fit into a ton of different stories. However, he's also probably the dumbest out of all the Autobots.
Grimlock, no like orders.
We really need your help. Why won't you give us a hand?
Me don't know why not. So we help.
I remember him being really annoying in the G1 show, and I thought my memories would still hold up during a rewatch. There are episodes where he knowingly and unknowingly harms his fellow Autobots. How was that enjoyable? But now I can safely say that he is one of my favorite Transformer characters. One thing I really like about Grimlock is that his low intelligence is more than just a character trait used for jokes. As I said, there are entire episodes that hinge on the fact that he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Grimlock believes that the strongest bot should rule, and he believes he is the strongest bot. So he has a big ego, he's really dumb and stubborn, and he intentionally hurts his team. Why do I think he's a good character? Because it's really hard to get mad at him. The show explains that he was literally made dumber to be more authentic to a real dinosaur.
Of course, the Dinobots have simple brains, just like real dinosaurs.
While that is one of the most stupid explanations I've ever heard, it's not really his fault he acts the way he does. He was built a certain way, and there's nothing that can be done now. It makes the moments where he does care for the other Autobots even more special, because you know it's genuine, and watching Grimlock fight is pretty sick. Shockwave has changed a lot over the years. His G1 cartoon personality has been more or less replaced with his original comic book appearance in the modern Transformer media. That's not to say the G1 Shockwave is bad. On the contrary, he's one of the most memorable characters. One of the defining aspects of Shockwave is that he's intimidating. His tall structure and unique voice by Corey Burton makes him very threatening. And while he doesn't have the greatest success rate compared to the other Decepticons, it rarely feels like the Autobots ever beat him. It's like they narrowly escaped Shockwave's grasp. And you can't talk about Shockwave without talking about his connection to Cybertron. He's the planet's guardian and won't let anything happen to it.
I must protect Cybertron from all hostile threats.
He's also in control of the whole machine that can teleport Decepticons from Earth to Cybertron. He's like an evil Hemdow.
Boots check, tool belt check, hard hat check. Up the builder, can we build it? Up the builder, yes!
He's not in as many episodes as the other Decepticons, because, you know, he's on an entirely different planet, but I think it's for the better. It makes him a rare treat, and adds to the air of the mystery surrounding him and Cybertron. He's a memorable character and an intimidating villain.
Believe me, he is lying.
He's the leader of the crew, you know him well. Megatron is one of the best 80 villains. From his iconic voice, sturdy design, lust for power, and the fact that he doesn't lose every time, everything about this villain is threatening.
The Autobots will not take aggressive action against Cybertron. He's hard enough to replace you whenever I choose. But not for long!
Yeah, I can't add like Megatron isn't drenched in 80s cheese, and that's what makes him so great. Megatron can be funny. Sure, most of his humor is probably unintentional, but it's still there. And who can forget his constant bickering with Starscream? That stuff is iconic, and it really shows the dual nature of his character. One minute you're genuinely concerned for Starscream's life, and the next you're watching two old men bicker about who's better.
Dinobots overwhelmed us with sheer brute force.
Brilliant, my boron compressor!
While maybe not the best written, Megatron is, in my opinion, the best cartoon villain to come out of the 80s. A character designed after a boombox is still relevant in 2020. Let that sink in. Soundwave earns his pop culture status, though. He's a big, strong, loyal, mysterious, and has a legendary voice. I mean, how can anyone hate him? He's kind of an honorable villain, if you think about it. He's not dumb, he only says what he needs to, he rarely insults his teammates, and he's nice to his cassette pets. But you know he's helping old Megatron do bad stuff, so I guess he is a villain. Also, I don't know if this is controversial to say, but his cassettes do more work. There will be times where he's just standing there, waiting for Laserbeak or Ravage to come back after doing the actual work. But Soundwave is still very useful. Not only is he one of the only Decepticons that can make his own Energon cubes, but he also has some of the best fighting skills out of the entire team. I mean, look at these moves. Then there was this time where Blaster and Soundwave fought 1v1, and because Hasbro needed to sell toys, Blaster won.
This is outrageous. It's unfair.
For most of the show, Soundwave is an extremely forbidding villain, to the point where he might be more threatening than Megatron. Truly one of my favorite Transformers. Unlike most characters on this list, Starscream is not smart, strong, efficient, or even threatening. He thinks of himself as the greatest Decepticon and proclaims it to everyone. But he fails almost every time he goes against Megatron and has to beg to him just so he won't kill him. Every character hates him. He is the pinnacle of pathetic. And that's why Starscream is so great. His struggle with Megatron isn't about how it's going to end. It's about its creative dialogue and slapstick and outlandish schemes. And it makes it so enjoyable. His persistence in the light of his constant failure comes across as both stupid and honorable. The show even gives him a reason to keep on trying, seeing how most of his plans almost work. I'd even argue that as the show progresses, Starscream's plans and ability to take advantage of a situation slowly becomes more efficient up until the movie where he's finally able to overthrow Megatron. And even though his plans don't always work, they normally have a large ramification for everyone else. Like the time he brought Decepticon prisoners back to life, almost leading to the destruction of Cybertron. Or the time he froze Megatron and accidentally himself, leading to all the destruction Astrotrain and Blitzwing created. And who could forget the time he tried to finish off the Autobots, but instead actually caused them to reactivate, leading to the entire show's conflict. With a lot of these characters, most of their humor comes from how much they are covered in 80s cheese. But it really feels like the writers knew how absurd Starscream was, and tried to reach his potential. Everything about this character is humorous, from his expression, one-liners, voice, and his name implies scream.
You can't keep me in here, Megatron!
It's Optimus. Who did you expect? Huffer?
Dinobots, huh? I thought you were supposed to make dinosaurs.
But in all seriousness, how could it not be Prime? You take everything unique about an 80s action hero and add honesty, compassion, and fatherly words of advice. Prime is such an amazing character that he's unironically a blast to watch no matter what he's doing. What can I say that hasn't already been said? You already know that he's a tough warrior. You already know he's loving and fatherly. You already know that he gives great speeches. Nearly everyone loves this character. Some even have a strong bond with Prime to the point where kids were actually traumatized by his death. I recommend searching up how Peter Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime, got the inspiration for a much softer and gentle hero. It's both touching and inspirational, so I don't really have too much to add. I mean, I like how he shows a lot of different emotions and makes him seem more human and complex. I like that the show gave him a backstory. I like how he's not overly focused on the war. And I especially like how he can make mistakes sometimes, get angry and frustrated.
I said I'm fine.
But if you watch the show, you already know that stuff. He is so popular because everyone knows why they like him. You hear Optimus Prime, and your mind immediately rushes to his epic battles, motivating wisdom, iconic design, and breathtaking voice. The Transformer franchise has changed a lot over the past decades, and the themes have grown more deeper and complex, and have much more exciting and thrilling battles. But it's good to look back at the characters that inspired it all. Subscribe or Huffer gets put in the next Transformer series.
Hope I get lucky!